I'm going to tell you a story of a young boy. When this boy was born, a tremor was sent through the Force. The Jedi and Sith alike seeked out this boy. When the Jedi eventually found him, he was alone, surrounded by his slaughtered family. The boy was taken to Tython, while a Dark Lord watched from the shadows. For years, the boy was trained in the Jedi arts, all the while being fueled by a vengeance to find the one who took everything from him. The boy knew the path of a Jedi could not lead to what he desired most. With his power growing even at a young age, the Jedi could not let this anomaly fall into the wrong hands, so the boy killed his way out. This pleased the Dark Lord that watched from afar. The Sith needed not to search for the boy, for he sought them out. An apprentice he became. Over the years, the boy's vengeance molded him into an unstoppable beast that soon not even his Sith masters could contain. Every duty the boy was tasked with left destruction in the wake. Years passed, decades even, the boy's eyes always forward, fixed towards his ultimate goal. The boy always sensed the Dark Lord was near, and the Dark Lord always knew one day the boy would come for him. But the boy would be the Dark Lord's greatest accomplishment, a specimen for the dark that harnessed unspeakable malice.
Hello there, I'm Cooosh. Well, here we are, gamers, back at it for another guide. This time, I'll be showing you Vengeance, a melee damage over time spec that has some amazing cleave. Now, I approach this guide from the perspective of a beginner, but with that being said, there could be something for someone to learn regardless of skill level. I broke this guide up into 6 chapters, so if you're looking for something specific, feel free to skip ahead. Now, without further ado, let me show you the way of the Vengeance Juggernaut. Welcome to Chapter 1, where we're going to be talking about our gear. Now, I'm not going to go over the entire gearing process of how to hit each and every one of these specifically, but I will put my 7.4 DPS gearing guide in the description below. In that video, I go into much greater detail on how to hit these numbers. So first up, with accuracy, we want to hit 110%. And that number we're looking for is 2704. To get to this number threshold, we're going to need 3 accuracy gear pieces, 4 accuracy gold augs, and our stim. I just want a disclaimer, if you've seen my other guides, my Pyrotech and my IO Merc have an alacrity of 2154. My Vengeance Jug is 2180. This is because the implants on Juggernaut are crit, where on IO and PowerTech, my implants are alacrity and crit. That's why there's a very minor shift in the numbers here. With that being said, we're rocking a 1.4 alacrity at 2180. We will need 3 gear pieces and 2 gold augs. And all of our remaining gear pieces and aug slots will go into crit. We will need 4 gear pieces and 8 gold augs. And I'm currently sitting at 3739. In terms of legendaries, the first up is the Fearless Victor package. This will count as one of our critical pieces. Whenever you use a rage spending damage ability, your melee damage is increased by 10% for 10 seconds. Rage is our primary resource, which I will go into more detail later. Our second legendary implant is Champion's Precision Package. This will also count as one of our critical pieces. Activating in Rage, Blood Rage, or Threatening Rage grants Champion's Precision, increasing your critical hit chance by 20% for 8 seconds. Now, as a Vengeance Jug, we will have 2 tacticals. We will have a single target tactical and an AoE tactical. Our single target tactical is Hemophilic Slash. Ravage refreshes the duration of Force Scream, Impale, and Shatters bleeds on the target, and ticks their damage. Our AoE tactical is Cut to Pieces. And my oh my, what a beauty this tactical is. I'll try to contain my excitement here, but we will definitely be covering this tactical in greater detail. When a bleed tick critically hits, it reduces the cooldown of Vengeful Slam by 1 second. This tactical is also referred to as Slam Spam. And because we are running a 1.4 GCD, our relics will be the Mastery Relic and the Power Relic. Throughout this guide, you will see these proc on our buff bar, and these are what those procs look like. Welcome to Chapter 2, where we're going to be talking about our abilities. In this chapter, we'll focus on our damage abilities, our cooldowns, and our utility abilities. First up on the list for our damage dealers is going to be our basic attack, Assault. Assault has a 4-meter range and generates 2 rage and inflicts X weapon damage with a series of quick melee attacks. Attacks with both weapons if dual wielding. A quick disclaimer, some of our abilities will mention attacks with both weapons if dual wielding. That will not apply to us because we are a Juggernaut and we only single wield. Next up is Force Charge. Has a 10 to 30 meter range, jumps to a distant target, dealing X damage with the main hand weapon, immobilizing the target for 2 seconds, and interrupting the target's current action. Builds 3 rage, and cannot be used against targets in cover. So long story short, this is basically our leap. Sundering Assault. Sundering Assault has a 4-meter range. It'll generate 5 rage and strike the target for X weapon damage, causing the target to become sundered. Sundered targets have their armor reduced by 20% for 45 seconds. Next we have Impale. Impale will cost us 4 rage and has a range of 4 meters. Impales the target for X weapon damage. Then we have Shatter. Shatter will cost us 5 rage and has a 4-meter range. Channels the force into your lightsaber and crushes your target under its weight, instantly dealing X internal damage, with a further X internal damage over 12 seconds. Then we have Force Scream. It'll cost us 4 rage and has a 10-meter range. Blast the target with the Force-enhanced Scream, dealing X kinetic damage. In addition, standard and weak enemies are stunned for 4 seconds. Next up is Ravage. Has a 4-meter range. Performs a series of lightsaber attacks that deal X weapon damage. Strikes with both weapons if dual wielding. Vengeful Slam, the King of Cleave. Slams your weapon on the ground, causing a force-empowered shockwave that deals X energy damage to up to 8 enemies within 5 meters. Stuns weak and standard enemies for 3 seconds. Vengeful Slam replaces Smash. Next up is Hue. It'll cost us 3 rage and has a 30-meter range. Hurls the main hand lightsaber at a target, dealing X weapon damage and slowing its movement speed by 50% for 3 seconds. Only usable on targets at or below 30% max health. This replaces Vicious Throw. Vicious Slash. This will cost us 3 rage and has a range of 4 meters. Slashes the target for X weapon damage, attacks with both weapons if dual wielding. Retaliation. This will cost us 2 rage and has a 4-meter range. Retaliates against the target for X weapon damage. Cannot be parried, dodged, or miss. Retaliation can only be used after successfully defending against a melee or ranged attack, or after one of your melee attacks is parried, dodged, or misses. Next up is Saber Throw. Has a 30-meter range. Throws the main hand lightsaber at a distant target, inflicting X weapon damage and building 3 rage. Saber Throw sunders its target for 45 seconds. Sundered targets have their armor rating reduced by 20%. Then we have Force Push, basically our single target knockback. It has a 10-meter range. Deals X kinetic damage, knocks the target back several meters, and knocks the target down for 2 seconds. Force Push immediately finishes the cooldown of Force Charge. In our talent tree, at level 27, we have the option to take Sweeping Slash. This ability costs us 3 rage, slashes up to 8 enemies within 5 meters in front of you for X weapon damage, attacks with both weapons if dual wielding. So now I'm going to talk about our cooldown abilities. And first up on the list is Saber Ward. Saber Ward has a 3-minute cooldown, raises a lightsaber ward, increasing melee and ranged defenses by 50% and absorbing 25% of the damage taken from force and tech attacks. Lasts 12 seconds. One note I want to add for Saber Ward is that Saber Ward will do absolutely nothing for you if you are stunned. So if you Saber Ward and you're stunned, use your stun break if you have it. In our abilities tab, we can search for a passive called Blade Turning. This is a passive we get at level 23. The first 2 seconds of Saber Ward grants 100% melee and ranged defense. Up next is Endure Pain. This will have a 1-minute cooldown. Temporarily increases your maximum health by 30% for 10 seconds and removes all cleansable effects. When the effect ends, the health is lost. In our talent tree, a passive that goes with Endure Pain is a passive we get at level 51. Deafening Defense. increases damage reduction by 5% at all times and by an additional 15% while Endure Pain is active. Next up for our cooldowns is Enraged Defense. Has a 2-minute cooldown, empowers you with 12 charges of Enraged Defense, lasting up to 15 seconds. Whenever you take damage, a charge of Enraged Defense is consumed to heal you for X. This ability can be used while stunned or otherwise controlled, but cannot be used while above 70% health. In our talent tree, at level 68, we have the choice to take Saber Reflect. This has a 1-minute cooldown. Reflects all direct single target ranged, force, and tech attacks back to the attacker for 5 seconds. The damage done by each reflect is capped. Still in our talent tree, at level 68 again, we can take Mad Dash. This has a 35-second cooldown. Madly dash forward 20 meters, dealing X weapon damage to enemies in your path and increasing your defense chance by 100% while dashing. Can be used while immobilized and purges movement impairing effects when activated. Threatening Scream. Threatening Scream has a 45-second cooldown. Immediately reduces threat towards all current enemies by a moderate amount. Player targets deal 30% less damage for 6 seconds when attacking anyone other than you. That last little bit of text will not apply to us. This is basically our threat dump. But in our talent tree, at level 64, we have the option to take Hardened Defense. All area effect damage is reduced by 60% for 15 seconds after Threatening Scream is activated. So basically, this makes Threatening Scream our AoE DR. Then we have a Blood Rage. The cooldown is affected by Alacrity, and right now it is at 41.9 seconds. Ruptures your bleeds on all targets within 10 meters of you, dealing a portion of their damage and generating 6 rage. Back at our talent tree, at level 43, we have the choice to take Bloodbound. Bloodbound is a passive, and critically hitting with the bleed effect reduces the cooldown of your Blood Rage by 1 second. Blood Rage purges movement impairing effects and heals you for 2% of your max health for each bleed effect it triggers, up to 20%. For my Alacrity, I am running a 1.4 GCD, so I'll be using a Power Adrenal. Increases power by 1005 and reduces all healing done by 20%. Lasts 15 seconds. And last but not least is our med pack. You hit it, you heal, and then you heal a little bit over time. You can only use this once in combat. If you die and are rezzed, you can use it again. Now we're going to talk about our utility abilities. The first one I want to cover is Intercede. Intercede's range is 30 meters. Leaps to a friendly target, reducing their threat by a moderate amount and reducing damage taken by 20% for 6 seconds. So much like how Force Charge, we can leap to an enemy, Intercede is a way for us to leap to a friendly target. And that reducing threat is no joke. If you happen to Intercede to a tank, they're going to lose aggro. Next up is Force Choke. This is basically our single target stun. It has a range of 10 meters. Chokes the target, stunning it for 4 seconds and generating moderate threat. Deals X kinetic damage and builds 3 rage over the duration. This ability can be channeled while moving. In our talent tree, at level 68, we can take Intimidating Roar. Paralyzes up to 8 nearby enemies in fear, preventing all action for up to 6 seconds. Damage ends that effect prematurely. Welcome to Chapter 3, where we're going to be talking about our ability interactions. Now, while I'm doing damage here and showcasing abilities and ability interactions, we're going to see a couple procs on our buff bar. I want to do a friendly reminder that we have the Power and the Mastery relics, and these are what those procs will look like. And then we will also have procs for our 2 legendaries, Fearless Victor package and Champion's Precision package. These are what our legendary procs will look like. For Champion's Precision package, when we activate Blood Rage, we will see this proc, Champion's Precision. For our Fearless Victor package, when we use an ability that costs us Rage, we will see this proc, Fearless Victor. This is the first class that I have covered that has Sunder, or an armor break. We have 3 abilities that can apply a Sunder. Sundering Assault is our first one. This is the Sunder icon. It is also referred to as an armor break. The other one is Saber Throw. Saber Throw will apply Sundered. In our talent tree, at level 73, you have the option to take Crushing Fist. Now, this first line of text is for the Immortal or Tank discipline That will not apply to us. This is the text we are looking at. For the Vengeance and Rage disciplines, Smash and Vengeful Slam sunder the targets they damage for 45 seconds. Sundered targets have their armor rating reduced by 20%. So basically, they take more damage. I want to talk about our primary resource, Rage. So right here on our character panel, you'll see 0 of 12 Rage. So the most Rage we can have at a time is 12. So basically how Rage works is we have abilities that will build us Rage, and then we have abilities that will spend Rage. And usually those abilities that spend a lot of Rage do a lot of damage. So the first thing I'm going to cover is some of our basic abilities that can build us Rage. There are a couple other ways we can build Rage through passives and interactions. I will cover those, but at first, I just want to go over the basics. First, I want to look at Assault. This was our basic attack that will build us 2 Rage. So we have 0 Rage, we activate Assault, 2 Rage, 2 Rage, 2 Rage. Next we have our Force Charge that will build us 3 Rage. 3 Rage. After Force Charge, we have our Saber Throw that will build us 3 Rage. 3 Rage. Now, our main Rage building ability is going to be Sundering Assault. On the tooltip, it says it'll generate 5 Rage. But if we go into our talent tree and our abilities tab and search for Raging Assault, we can look at this passive. Reduces the cooldowns of Sundering Assault and Aegis Assault by 3 seconds each, and increases the Rage they generate by 2. Real quick, if you're thinking, what is Aegis Assault? That is basically Sundering Assault on the Immortal tank spec. So that will not apply to us. So again, the tooltip says 5, but because of that passive, when we activate Sundering Assault, we will build 7 Rage. On the topic of passives, in our talent tree at level 27, we have the option to take the passive Overwhelming Slashes. Ravage immobilizes the target for 3 seconds and generates 1 Rage. Ravage, 1 Rage. The next Rage builder I want to talk about is our cooldown Blood Rage. When activated, this will generate us 6 Rage. In our talent tree, under our abilities tab again, if we search for Endless Rage, we will see a passive we get at level 10. Generates 1 Rage when attacked. This effect cannot occur more than once every 6 seconds. This is basically a way for us to generate Rage passively if we're taking damage. Still on the topic of Rage, I want to talk about a passive we have at level 15, Sheehan Form. Utilize an aggressive lightsaber form, increasing all damage dealt by 6%, melee damage by an additional 5%, damage reduction by 5%, and movement speed by 15%. All attacks that consume Rage will refund 1 Rage when used. I want to use a very basic example to showcase Sheehan Form. Now, Vicious Slash will cost us 3 Rage, but because of Sheehan Form, it will refund 1 Rage. So I'm going to use Assault to build us to 4 Rage. We'll notice we have 2, cannot use Vicious Slash because it costs 3. So we'll do 1 more Assault, we're at 4, then we can use Vicious Slash, but instead of going to 1, we will only go to 2 because we were refunded. One more time, Vicious Slash needs 3 Rage to be activated. We have 2 Rage, can't use it. Now we have 4 Rage, we can use it. It costs 3, but because of Sheehan Form, it's going to refund and we're going to go to 2. Now I do want to note, Vengeful Slam is free, but when used, it will build us 1 Rage. And this is because of Sheehan Form. So hopefully at this point in the guide, we have a good understanding of how we can build Rage. For this next part of our ability interaction chapter, I want to start to go over our heavy hitter abilities and how we can put some dots on the target. The first one I want to take a look at is Shatter. Now on the tooltip, if we notice here, it says with a further X internal damage over 12 seconds. So basically what that means is Shatter will put a 12-second dot on the target. And let's take a peek at that here. Let's build up some Rage and Shatter. There is our Shatter debuff, Bleeding. Periodic internal damage. In our talent tree, at level 43, we get a passive Eviscerate. Impale causes the target to bleed for X internal damage over 6 seconds and beats the target down for 45 seconds. Beatdown targets take 5% more damage from melee attacks. So let's see an example of Eviscerate here. We'll activate our Sundering Assault to get our 7 rage. Let's Impale, and then there is our bleeding on the target. Back at our talent tree, at level 23, we get the passive Draining Scream. Shatter finishes the active cooldown on Ravage and generates 3 rage. Force Scream causes the target to bleed for X internal damage over 6 seconds. So let's look at our Draining Scream passive. I'm going to Ravage. Ravage is on cooldown. Then let's Shatter. Uh-oh, that reset the cooldown of Ravage, and then when we Force Scream, there is another dot on the target. Draining Scream. So now that we've talked about the Draining Scream passive and Sheehan form, I want to show a little interaction between Shatter and Impale. A quick reminder, Sheehan form will refund us 1 rage when using an ability that costs us rage, and Draining Scream lets Shatter build 3 rage. We see here that Shatter costs us 5 rage, so let's activate Shatter. We are left with 4. This is because, yes, Shatter costs us 5 rage, but from the Draining Scream passive, it builds us 3, and because of Sheehan form, we are also refunded 1. So I just wanted to point out that because of how these passives work, we can Shatter into Impale if we have 5 rage. But we cannot Impale into Shatter. I know I've been talking a lot, so let's just do a quick recap. Impale will put a dot on the target with the Eviscerate passive. Shatter will just naturally put a dot on the target. And then Force Scream will also put a dot on the target because of the Draining Scream passive. So we have 3 dots. If there's one thing you can really remember to take away from this chapter, it's that we're going to be putting 3 dots on the target. And if we also remember our tactical, Ravage refreshes the duration of Force Scream, Impale, and Shatter's bleeds on the target and ticks their damage. So I hope you're starting to see our interactions here. Here I want to showcase our dots and our Hemophilic / tactical. So I'm going to build up some rage. Let's Impale for the dot, Shatter for the dot, Force Scream for the dot, and Ravage to refresh our dots. Now a passive I want to talk about on our buff bar is Destroyer. In our talent tree, at level 68, we get the passive Destroyer. Increases the damage dealt by your bleeding effects by 15%. In addition, your Ravage and bleed damage has a 30% chance to trigger Destroyer, which finishes the cooldown on Hue and makes your next Hue consume no rage and usable on a target with any health level. This effect cannot occur more than once every 20 seconds. Now it may not look like it, but Destroyer can benefit from Sheehan form. So let's Impale, let's Shatter, Force Scream, refresh our dots. There's our Destroyer proc. So when we Hue, we will build 1 rage. Now another passive I want to talk about is what you're seeing right here, Savagery. In our talent tree, at level 60, we get the passive Savagery. Shatter, Impale, Hue, and Vengeful Slam increase the critical chance of your next Force Scream by 50%. Lasts 15 seconds, stacks up to 2 times. Let's see an example of Savagery. Build up some rage. Impale, 1 stack of Savagery. Shatter, 2 stacks of Savagery. And then boom, 100% crit chance. I do want to note that we can use Vengeful Slam out of combat and it's free. So technically, we can build 2 stacks of Savagery using our Vengeful Slam out of combat. Now that we've talked about our 3 dots and how we can refresh those dots, I want to talk about Blood Rage again. In Chapter 2, I mentioned the passive Bloodbound. This is the text I want to focus on here. Critically hitting with the bleed effect reduces the cooldown of your Blood Rage by 1 second. So I'm going to get our dots on the target, and I'm going to activate Blood Rage and Ravage to refresh them. Now as our dots are ticking and critting, the cooldown is being reduced. Back in our talent tree, at level 51, we have an option to take the passive Extending Roar. Increases the range of Force Scream to 30 meters. A Force Scream deals reduced damage beyond 10 meters. Additionally, Force Push deals 20% more damage and grants Extending Roar, allowing your next Force Scream to deal full damage regardless of the distance from the target. So 10 meters or less, Force Scream will do its normal damage. But beyond 10 meters, its damage is reduced. I'm going to activate Force Push here, and then we'll see our buff Extended Roar. Force Scream deals full damage up to 30 meters. Here we are off-site to talk about our next ability interaction. In our talent tree, at level 35, we get the passive Bloodbath. Smash and Vengeful Slam spread your bleed effects to all targets they damage, if at least one of the targets is already affected by your bleeds. In addition, Sweeping Slash deals 25% more damage to bleeding targets. So let's say this target on the right is my dot spread target. What I mean by that is I'm going to put my dots on this target on the right. So I'll have my Impale, Shatter, Force Scream, and then I Slam. If that slam hits both of these targets, it'll spread all three of my dots to the target on the left. So on this target, I'm going to put my Impale, my Shatter, Force Scream, and then we're going to slam. And on the target on the left, all three of my dots. Now, if we're being honest, this is what we've all been waiting for. Cut to pieces. In Chapter 1, I talked about this tactical. But a quick refresher, when a bleed tick critically hits, it reduces the cooldown of Vengeful Slam by 1 second. And boy oh boy, is this fun. So I just want you to envision this with me. We have a target with 3 dots and we slam hitting a second, and then we have 6 dots. But what if there was another target? Then there's 9 dots. What if there was another? Then there's 12 and 15! When a bleed tick critically hits, it reduces the cooldown of Vengeful Slam by 1 second. Let's do a dot, let's do a dot, let's do a dot, and let's slam! And slam! And slam! And slam! Now our cleave doesn't end there. At level 27 in our talent tree, we have the option to take Projected Scream. Force Scream does damage to additional enemies in a cone in front and slows them by 50% for 6 seconds. So between our Bloodbath passive and Projected Scream and our Slam on its own, that is all passive cleave. And what I mean by that is, say we're just focusing one target, we have all of these abilities that just naturally cleave or AoE onto other nearby enemies. And Scream? Now, if you find yourself thinking, Cooosh, there's no way we could possibly have any more cleave. Not so fast. Because in our talent tree, at level 23, we have the passive Shatter Burst. Killing a target with direct bleed damage while affected by Shatter causes it to explode, hitting nearby targets. Yes! More cleave! Let's round up some enemies and see some Shatter Burst in action. If you're fighting a lot of ads, Shatter Burst can cause a chain reaction. So Shatter Burst! Just a little Shatter Burst! One thing I really hate is getting knocked back. So let's take a peek. I'm gonna leap in. There's the knock. Grr. In our talent tree, at level 64, we have the option to take War Master. Force Charge grants Unstoppable, granting immunity to interrupts, stuns, knockdowns, incapacitating and movement pairing effects, and effects that push or pull you around for 4 seconds. Additionally, during this time, damage reduction is increased by 20% for 4 seconds. They think they're gonna knock us here? Not so fast. Love to see it. Another ability interaction I want to showcase was on the Force Push tooltip, and we can see that here. Force Push immediately finishes the cooldown of Force Charge. Here we go, leaping in, Force Push, and leap in again. Easy peasy. Offside again to talk about one more passive that we can find in our abilities tab. Seething Hatred. Now this won't come up a ton in raids, but it's something I think that you should know. When you exit combat, the active cooldowns of Force Charge, Blood Rage, and Saber Throw are reduced by 100%. This is just much easier to showcase on low B enemies. So let's do a little force throw. You're dead. Force throw, little leap, little force throw with some blood rage, little leap, little force throw, little blood rage, little force throw, little leap. I hope you get the point. This last ability interaction I want to cover is not one that comes up often, but I think it's something that's just nice to have in the back of your head. At the end of the Mad Dash animation, if we force leap, the damage from Mad Dash will be applied to the target we leap to. So I'm going to leap in on the dummy here, and we're going to see 1 fly text of damage. Now this time I'm going to Mad Dash and be spamming my leap, and we're going to see 2 fly text. One will be the damage from force charge, the other will be the damage from Mad Dash. Mad Dash and spam leap. There's the damage from our Mad Dash and our force charge. Welcome to Chapter 4, the Talent Tree. Now I'm covering things that I thought were the most important in terms of passives and abilities, but I do recommend going through and reading the tooltips just in case I overlook something. With that being said, I'm going to show you 2 talent trees. So first up will be what I usually run 99.9% of the time for just my jack of all trades single target. At level 15, we get our Blood Rage and our Shatter ability. At level 23, I usually take Deep Cuts for my single target. This is a passive. While Shatter is on a target, the crit chance of all your bleed attacks on that target is increased by 10%. At level 27 for single target, I usually take Overwhelming Slashes. If there's going to be multiple targets around, maybe Projected Scream, but I kind of just like the little extra rage I get from Ravage. Level 35, we get our Impale. At level 39, I always take Bleeding Offense. At level 43, I always take Bloodhound. At level 47, we get our Hue. Now for our level 51 option, there are a couple I want to talk about. Normally, I take the Extended Roar, but I do believe you should be aware of the other 2 options. The second option I want to talk about is Warmonger. Getting attacked reduces the active cooldown of Force Charge by 1 second. This effect cannot occur more than once every 1.5 seconds. Force Charge enables your next Vicious Throw or Hue to be used against a target with any percentage of health. But if we do remember our Destroyer passive, we also do have that proc that'll let us use Hue regardless of the enemy's health, and it's free. The last one I want to talk about is Unyielding. You generate 4 rage when stunned, immobilized, put to sleep, or knocked around. At 60, we get our Vengeful Slam. At 64, we have our AoE DR in the name of Hardened Defense. The other passive I talked about here was War Master. Now these one I can see flipping and flopping. If I know I'm going to get knocked around a lot, I'll take War Master. But if I need that AoE DR, I'm going to be taking Hardened Defense. For 68, kind of the same thing. Saber Reflect if I'm going to be reflecting something, or Mad Dash if I need a little extra mobility, or I just totally need to negate some damage. I also did briefly talk about Intimidating Roar, just another one of those things I think you should know just for your toolkit, but I don't necessarily really ever take this. And for 73, Crushing Fist is just our little AoE Sunder, but the other one I wanted to talk about was Through Passion. Reduces the cooldown of Enraged Defense by 30 seconds. This will take our Enraged Defense from a 2-minute cooldown to a 1-minute and 30-second cooldown. This is just another one of those passives that I think it's important to know about. Because say you are going to be in a situation where you're going to be taking lots of damage, this is a pretty significant cooldown reduction. But if I'm being honest, for my single target running Hemophilic Slash 99.9% of the time, this is what I'm taking. Now on to our second talent tree. I'm going to be talking about what I'll be taking if I'm rocking Cut to Pieces or just want that extra AoE. For level 23, it's nice to take Shatter Burst if there's going to be a lot of ads dying. This isn't necessarily great if there's going to be multiple bosses. You'll mostly see a benefit from this if there's going to be ads dying to cause that chain reaction. So that's the little caveat to Shatter Burst. For 27, Projective Scream is nice for just that passive cleave. For 39, I'll still be taking Bleeding Offense. For 43, I'll still be taking Bloodhound. 51, I'm usually rocking Extended Roar. For 64, just kind of depends if you need that AoE DR or if you want that knockback resist. 68 just depends on what cooldown you want. And 73, usually for AoE, I'd be taking Crushing Fist, just because it will spread Sunder to all of our targets. So for a general AoE damage build with the Cut to Pieces tactical, this is the talent tree I'll be rocking. Well, here we are at last. The opener and rotation. Now, gamers, I'm going to get us right into this one. So how our opener is going to work is we're going to start with a nice force charge into the target. Then we are going to Sundering Assault. Then we are going to Impale. This will get us our first stack of Savagery. Then we are going to Shatter for our second stack of Savagery. After that Shatter, we are going to Force Scream. After that Force Scream, we're going to hit our Blood Rage and our Adrenal into Ravage. And because of the Hemophilic / Tactical, that Ravage will refresh all 3 of our dots. Then we are going to Slam. Then we are going to use our Proc Hue from Destroyer. And for now, that's where I'm going to end the opener. Alright, let's see this opener nice and slow. We're going to Force Charge in, Sundering Assault, Impale, Shatter, Force Scream, Blood Rage, Adrenal, and then our Ravage to refresh our dots. Then we're going to Slam, and then Hue. Let's do the opener again, nice and slow. We'll Force Charge, Sundering Assault, Impale, Shatter, Force Scream, Blood Rage, and our Adrenal, Ravage to refresh our dots, Slam, and then Hue. Let's see that again. Force Charge, Sundering Assault, Impale, Shatter, Force Scream, Blood Rage, Adrenal, Ravage, a little Slam, a little Hue. Now let's see our opener one more time, but this time I'm going to have the abilities already up and I am not going to say a word. Now let's see our opener in a boss fight. For this example, I'll be using good old Nimnefra. I will have the abilities already up, and I am not going to say a word.
She will collect her toll in blood.
So we talked about our opener, now let's talk about the rotation. I will obviously break this down more, but just to plant the seed, this is our rotation. Impale, Filler, Force Scream, Filler, Smash, and Filler. And if you're like me, you're thinking, why isn't Shatter or Ravage there? Well, because the rotation I'm going to teach you and how we're going to break this down is that technically we're going to consider Ravage and Shatter our fillers. The abilities Impale, Force Scream, and Smash will always be in these fixed spots. Shatter will be floating around from each of these filler spots as the rotation goes. A good rule of thumb that I personally try to stick to is only ravaging when I have all 3 of my dots on the target to fully maximize our tactical. So generally what I try to do is after our Force Scream in that second filler spot, if I have all 3 of my dots on the target, I will Ravage. If Ravage isn't off cooldown there, or I don't have all 3 of my dots on the target, I will utilize a different filler. So this was where our opener ended, and from that ending, we will get right into this rotation. So after our opener, our first ability will be Impale. After that Impale, we have our first filler. Now, I want a quick disclaimer. I have scoured the internet looking over different vengeance parses. I've gone through different discords, and every single one of them appears to have a different filler priority. The friend I have helping me peer review this guide is Roscoe. So this is what he recommended as a filler priority, and this is what I will be going by. Again, I do want to mention, I do have Ravage at the top of the list, but that's only if I have 3 dots on the target. Shatter will have our next utmost priority, then our Destroyer, then there is Retaliation, a Vicious Slash, Saber Throw, Force Push with the utility to boost the damage, then Sundering Assault, then just our regular basic attack Assault. How this rotation will line up is stuff will just fall into place. I know it could appear a little overwhelming right now where we have this massive list of fillers, but honestly, stuff just lines up and it's also very easy to recover. It's not like an IO where, oh, I messed up and now I have to do all this fancy stuff to get back on track. For this spec specifically, stuff will just fall back into place. So don't overthink this too much. It'll be Impale, Filler, Force Scream, Filler, Slam, Filler. Shatter will just line up in one of those spots. Ravage will 90% of the time fall in after Force Screen with all 3 of your dots. Your Destroyer will proc Hue in one of those filler spots usually. And then I personally prioritize Saber Throw and Sundering Assault just so I don't run out of rage. There are other fillers that will do more damage, but I don't think it's as beneficial if you're going to run out of rage and then you're going to have to do an extra filler, ultimately delaying your Impale, Shatter, Force Scream, and so on. Those 3 abilities will always line up in that same spot. Now, granted, yes, there are times in boss fights where you'll be running around or something falls out of whack, but don't overthink it. This spec is very easy to recover because eventually everything will just line back up as you use your abilities. I do want to mention one more time that yes, on my filler priority hierarchy, I have Sundering Assault toward the end, but I do use that ability pretty frequently because it is very important to have rage for your heavy hitter rage costed abilities. I hope what I'm saying makes sense. Now let's take a look at the rotation in use. So let's see a nice smooth transition from our opener into our rotation. Force Charge, Sundering Assault, Impale, Shatter, Force Scream, Blood Rage Adrenal Ravage, and Slam. Now we're going to Hue right into our rotation with an Impale, then a filler, then a Force Scream, then a filler, then a Slam, then a filler, then an Impale, then a filler. Now on this Force Scream, we're going to have all 3 of our dots, so we're going to Ravage for the filler, then Slam, filler, Impale, filler, Force Scream. All my dots, Ravage, Slam, filler, Impale, filler, Force Scream. All my dots, so Ravage for the filler spot, then Slam, filler, then Impale, filler, Force Scream, filler, and Slam. Now that we've covered our single target opener and rotation, I want to briefly talk about using the Cut to Pieces tactical. For using the Cut to Pieces tactical, instead of applying all 3 of your dots then slamming, you can reduce setup time by starting with Impale, then Slam, then using your Force Scream and Shatter, then Slam, 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 Slam. The reason we're doing this is because the dots from Impale and Scream tick very quickly, which will ultimately make your Cut to Pieces proc faster. This also gives you the ability to use an extra slam with less setup overall. The boss I want to use for a Cut to Pieces setup is the Dreadguards from TFB on the Nightmare difficulty.
Always when I click off my shoulder cannons, I swear.
Now, if I haven't been able to convince you that Vengeance has the best cleave in the game, I'm gonna let this clip from Roscoe do the talking.
Oh, not that, unless I'm at the boss. I have no taunt here if I lose aggro for 7 seconds, so let's see what happens.
I got alacrity, oh my god.
Oh, well, you're in a pull aggro.
I'm playing diversion because I'm scared for us.
That's fine.
Of course.
Alright, you can take
Welcome to Chapter 6, Final Thoughts. Now, I always like to keep this chapter short and sweet, so I'm gonna get right to it. I think Vengeance is a very beginner-friendly spec. It's very easy to recover if you fall out of your rotation, but with that being said, it's no slouch when it comes to damage. And it has the capability to do absolutely incredible cleave. The AoE damage this class can pump out is insane! And I love it. And on top of all of that, it has an armor break. One thing I didn't totally mention in Chapter 5 when going over the rotation is that when you're in sub 30, you can still use an unprocced Hue in one of those filler spots. Just be aware you won't be getting the rage reduction because Destroyer wasn't procced. But at the end of the day, if you're playing Vengeance and you find yourself slipping out of the rotation, just get those dots on the target, refresh them with Ravage, and slam. Well, that's the guide. I hope I was able to get you started on your Vengeance journey. In my opinion, Vengeance has the strongest AoE damage in the game, as well as the capability to dish out solid single target damage. I wanted to give a special thanks to Roscoe for all the work he did helping me behind the scenes. I asked if he had any advice for future Vengeance players out there, and he did not disappoint. I will now close with his advice.
Use endure pain. Stop holding it for the entire fight.